Hey, it's Max here, and it's the end of day 23 of the AI sprint. We got 7 days left, so we got to make it count. Let's start with updates and projects. A lot has happened. First off, Email Spy. So Email Spy is the big one for this week. We're planning to launch it on Product Hunt on Thursday. This is a project that I'm co-building with Oscar from Workflows from the community. Oscar's done a ton of great work on this. It's a really polished product already. I tested on staging, and I was just so proud to see how quickly it was done. Just like massive props to Oscar. He did a heavy lifting on this one. So the current status of that is Oscar and I both have a list of to-dos. On Oscar's side, there's a little bit more testing we want to do, make sure on certain edge cases that we catch that. We're going to make that all public so you can duplicate it on your own NAN account. From my side, the majority of my to-dos are around launch assets, so getting everything prepped, and then also creating all the assets so people can duplicate it. So nice docs, nice setup video, all that stuff takes time, but it's so important because if we do all this work and no one knows how to duplicate it, no one knows how to set it up, we kind of lose the massive benefit of creating a nice inductive asset for people to learn from. As I said, Oscar did an amazing job. And on the next update, we're going to get on a call and he's going to walk us through his workflow. Because we haven't really done a deep dive on that. And yeah, it's on staging now. I was giving it a little test yesterday and it's impressive. Like this thing found on PostHog, it found like 7 first-person email names. And when I was looking at the results, it found these results across Crunchbase, posthog.com, posthog docs, and GitHub. I think another great use of this tool is going to be folks plugging in their own sites and seeing which of their emails are publicly available that they might not want to be. One thing we're not going to do for the launch is make the API available to be used publicly, because we do think that could increase the abuse. So you will have to manually go to the front end, the Vercel app, and run it to get a result. And then if you want to run it through your API, you'll be able to duplicate it, set up the end-to-end workflow on your own account and run that. So yeah, really excited about that project. And don't forget, Thursday on Product Hunt, we're launching Email Spy. And then today I had a lovely lunch with Marcel. So Marcel is one of NNN's community ambassadors. We met up to discuss a collaboration. There's an AI hackathon this weekend at Factory Berlin. It's Saturday and Sunday, about 10 hours apiece. So since there's 2 of us, we've got 40 hours to flowgram some AI solution. And we're thinking of building an AI data assistant specifically for product analytics. The idea is to have it understand how to interact with PostHog. We might have to put your PostHog data into a vector store. But what we really want to tackle is seeing how we can have our AI agents understand things like math and statistics. Anyone using some of the more advanced GPTs will see that it itself will sometimes write Python to do math and these kinds of analyses. We want to show that in something that's reproducible, that's open for others to copy. I'm not going to lie, that use case makes me a bit nervous. It's probably going to be the most advanced thing we've built on the AI sprint. This is what Marcel does for a living, right? He builds sophisticated end-to-end workflows for business customers using a lot of the AI functionality. So I'm confident we got a good team between the 2 of us to ship that. While at lunch, we also had some nice chats about best practices in prod and some learnings that Marcel has had building advanced AI agents in the wild. Check that, because later in the video, I got a nice little cut down of our lunch that we had, and the duck was delicious, by the way. And then another big shout out to our community. I keep getting DMs. Thank you so much for all the love, especially folks who are messaging, being inspired by the sprint and they're starting to build. Please keep sending those in. That's what helps me put that little extra bit of effort when I'm writing the docs on one of these things, knowing that someone out there is reading it. And it's helping unblock them to build cool stuff with AI, because I don't know, this week there's been so many moments where I was just mind blown by what I was able to do as a non-engineer, quote unquote. But at this point, I think flowgrammers are going to give engineers a run for their money. I'm just kidding. We still very much need you guys. So in the last video, I talked about how I love to do a voice use case. Now the time's running out. But this morning, I set a challenge and time boxed about 30 minutes and said, let's build a simple template that shows people how you could say something like, hey Siri, start a command, sends whatever you say to an end-to-end workflow, and then Siri says back the output. And I got it working. And honestly, the hardest part was just figuring out what Apple calls these different things. So I'm going to upload it as a template, because you can download Apple shortcuts flows or whatever they call them as a template, and you can for end-to-end. The plan is After the email spy launch on Thursday, I'm going to upload that. Although there's a screenshot right here that shows the basic pattern if you want to recreate that until then. So in my template, it just takes a message from the user, turns that into text and sends that to the workflow. But the cool thing with shortcuts is they have a bunch of other data that you can take from the phone or ask of the user. So you can ask the user to take a photo, you can grab their geolocation and whatnot. So you can capture a lot of stuff from the user, send that to the AI agent. It has this rich context from a three-dimensional world where you're interacting with in that moment. And in seconds, return that back to you. You can have Siri say that to you. You could have it show you a modal. You could have it have multiple steps. The AI agent could return that, show you a modal. You do some human in the loop step, for example, reviewing a draft before it's sent, and then it sends it along. So I'll upload that. And my challenge to the community is going to be for you guys to take that basic template and build some actually cool shortcuts that you share. Now, one idea I had was, hey Siri, happy hour. So what it does is it takes your geolocation, it tells the AI agent that has, let's say like a Google Maps tool, finds happy hours in the area, finds one that's available and opens up Google Maps with directions to happy hour. If you're the first person to build that and send it to me, I will send you a €100 Amazon gift card. The only requirements is that it works and that you publish it as a workflow template on n8n.io so that other people can clone it. You do that, I'm sending you €100 and a very happy thank you note. I'm here with Marcel. Hey,
Hi everyone.
And we're grabbing a little lunch today to chat AI and some upcoming maybe collaborations as well. But before we get into it, Marcel, can we just get a little introduction? You're quite a prominent community now.
Hi, I'm Marcel. I do workflow automation, naturally, under the brand Let the Workflow, my agency thing. I'm also an n8n ambassador, so really enjoying being part of this community, contributing to this community, and having the chance to talk with actually n8n staff and philosophers about AI. I think I will take this miso sauce, which I definitely go for a tea.
Yeah.
You know, like all this rainy weather.
Yeah, I also get a tea, like ginger or something. There's an event coming up, right?
Yeah, there's this hackathon. I've asked you if you might want to join, and we make like a two-person team there. AI-focused hackathon.
That was our first office, actually, factory. Technically, Khan worked from there for a short while.
Yeah, I know. You mentioned something like that. Back then, factory was like this place for startups to be here in Berlin. They're really like brought co-working here to Berlin, and it was just a great place and so many cool startups.
Like, can I please have, you have a ginger tea?
Ginger tea.
Yes, thank you.
Bold choice.
Thank you.
So there's this AI hackathon. Three target groups. One of them is like technical people. I think that's where we fit in. Actually, I think most of the people will also have the need to find the idea. So it might be a good situation where we can have sparring.
Yeah, honestly, if we have a bunch of other ideas too, if we get some other people to build it, maybe we can set them up with an n8n account there and then.
Definitely, I think it would be great.
We're going to bring some coupon codes.
That is something that we definitely need to bring, because knowing the factory members, they're really technical, they're really focused on their product.
A few moments later.
I saw on LinkedIn the other day, I'm just scrolling and I see the headline, it's these humanoid bipedal AI robots. And it was like, for $16,000, you can buy one today. And in future, I would love to have a co-host of some n8n show to be like the n8n robot, but it can run in and work, of course.
You should definitely have such robots in your office. As you mentioned, no, you finally have a dishwasher, and someone has to put in the dishes, right?
It's not going to be me.
Awesome.
Okay, so 48 hours. So we got some, between the two of us, that's quite a lot of build time.
Definitely.
What if we tried to rebuild an existing small SaaS or some sort of AI solution in low code in 48 hours? Maybe it doesn't have every bell and whistle, but to really validate, because we're going to be filming this and show on camera that in 48 hours it's possible. And if there's some things that are hard to do, like great feedback on what needs to improve for that to be possible. I've seen that happen before. Again, if a script kiddie like me can ship something in a day, I think between the two of us, we could definitely ship something that people would call a SaaS. You know, we don't have to release it as a SaaS. We can release it as a free workflow template, free SaaS, and just gift that to the world.
Definitely, we can do that. from now on, it's just like finding a right idea, because with building with N8N, I think 48 hours, or let's say it's more like 20 hours work time. It's super
there's
doable.
40, right? There's two of us, so.
Yeah. Oh, you have to think in headcount, right?
Yeah, we are FTEs.
Yeah. I think it might be also interesting to split parts of that. So maybe split it in different workflows. So one can work on this and and the other person on that. Or one could work on the front end stuff and the other one focus on the automation part.
When we worked with Olaf, I did a hack with him last week.
Yeah.
And what we did is, it smells delicious. So with Olaf, what we did, for example, one of us was working on a parent workflow and one on a tool.
Yeah.
So all we did was agree on the query. Just like you would with front and back end.
Yeah.
And we did that on a few different workflows. Even when it was going to be one workflow, I took one chunk with a set node. And we said, okay, here's the schema you will expect.
Yeah.
And I knew that I will have to work on getting a schema, and he had a mock schema. So lots of different ways. And I think it'd be cool to show folks how you work
Definitely
in a duo like that.
Making this more granular, like more in detail, like this specific part of the workflow. We could even just agree on putting multiple nodes, like one path of a workflow, and agreeing on this is the output for this person's input, and this is the output for this person.
Exactly.
And like then copy and paste it like in this big canvas. Fancy.
This happened like with Oscar. So for Email Spy, what we're doing is it uses a few different methods.
Yeah.
Basically scraping different sources.
Yeah.
And so the workflow branches out, and you've got this one path that's using Firecrawl with an agent, and this one that's using traditional methods. And then at the end, it has to merge it. So if we were doing something like that, we know we have two methods to go do something. We would just end up saying, okay, by the time we get to the merge node, here's your set node, here's my set node. It's got to be in this schema. And then super easy.
This is like something that I'm really looking forward for the hackathon.
Yeah.
Collaboration with another N8N dev.
Professional automators, very often you're working on the solution by yourself.
Yeah.
So just having a sparring partner, hey, maybe this idea, or maybe this, or the other person made that idea better, as happens often when humans collaborate, right? So that was a really cool aspect of it.
Good appetit. Enjoy your meal. Not just a question of what kind of SaaS we want to disrupt, right? I also have I'm also a SaaS funder. And I don't want to replace my SaaS. You cannot replace it with AI at the moment. Heavily regulated financial institution thing, but
we probably shouldn't get another.
It's basically, it gives you all your transactions from a given bank account or PayPal account as one simple REST API.
Banking APIs are hard. I was trying to find a bank for consumer that I could always automate, and it's difficult.
No, it's super difficult.
No.
So hence, my SaaS is really enabling you to have a dedicated REST API for your bank accounts and stuff. Next step would be having an AI agent that you can ask for specific queries. What was my spendings on food last quarter or something like that. But what else? Do you have a SaaS application that you really, really depend on and then that you would say it's easy to replace?
Let's look at my phone. One thing I have not done with AI agents yet is, you know how they're not so good at math and that kind of thing? I know we have a Wolf Alpha tool. AI agents that understand things like statistics and stuff to crunch numbers on your data. Now, obviously, there's lots of different analytics tools. One thing that I've really wanted to do sometimes is, you take a bunch of data points. Take with N8N, we use PostHog, right? 10,000 events come in. I would love to be able to ask the AI, insights, question mark? What? And what could be interesting is,
a data scientist as an AI agent with just raw input, and you say, I want to get insights on that, and it analyzes data structure.
And maybe what it could do as well is, I think it might be good if it's a little opinionated. The AI agent is a product analyst, right? And maybe if we built it to work with, let's say, PostHog, it expects to understand PostHog events, and we could teach it, maybe even with a RAG, here's 50 analyses that product managers often do. Here's how they're done. It's an ANOVA analysis of this or this. And obviously maybe MVP, we only being able to do a couple things. But we found with N8N's Ava, this is the co-pilot. We kind of have this approach where we first infer the intent, and then once we understand the intent, to send it to a specific agent made for that task. Perhaps how it could work is you have your data source, PostHog, whatever, right? Your app telemetry. Maybe you could have multiple sources in the future. And at first, there's a fallback agent, right? Which is just the helpful agent, ask questions. Yeah. But then we could maybe for MVP, we identify 2 three things that PMs need to do often, with a little bit of that prompting, a little bit of, hey, AI, this is how you do it. Maybe we can even get it to the point where it's outputting these charts, right? Like, oh, statistically significant that people on iOS do better than Android.
Yeah.
Huh, is there a bug on Android?
Also, you can follow up questions, and it will just retrieve the information from your loggings. That could be really, really cool.
And it's bold, right? This makes me a little
It's
nervous, right? This is not like easy. We could come up with a much simpler idea and for sure get it done. I would rather something that's a little bolder.
It
If
has to be
too
challenging
complicated,
for us, right?
we can scope it down as we work. That happens in hackathons. Often we can show
Yeah.
that, but let's have a bold idea.
Yeah, I think it's really, really cool, and it's like a really ambitious target.
And what we could do is someone could just pipe in their raw post-hoc data today, right? But I think where the utility could happen as well is the little bit of prompting on top adds the context. So this tool helps you fetch events. Each event will always have a user ID. User ID is what ties events together. So we can understand concepts like, how do I understand a user? Basically, there's going to be certain concepts in an app that having the AI understand
Yeah.
and not hallucinate on is going to have it be able to make decisions on how to calculate that data better. So that's really where I think the value we could provide and show how, yes, it's pretty easy to fetch that data from post hogs, but with good prompting, this is how you get a useful solution. We could figure out a sub-workflow tool that could do, proper stats.
So that totally reminds me of how ChatGPT itself does those calculations. It literally just writes itself a Python script, runs that, observes the result, and uses this result. So there has to be some way, and I really dig this idea because it's challenging, but I would say it's also doable. We will have like a cool product, I think.
Especially because if we take this multi-agent approach, we set up a simple fallback agent when it doesn't have one of our pre-made intents. Like, yes, it might not be as effective, but then we're also showing for MVP, it can do one or two things really well.
Yeah.
It has a way where it doesn't have a terrible UX if it can't do it well. And we're setting up a system for how we can iteratively add to it. Because what happens when you ship a product? You're going to get feedback. Maybe 80% of users are all using one, intent. Great. We're going to focus on making that intent better. Or maybe they're like, I want these 5 other intents, but they want one of them 5 times 4. So then we add that one and we could show in what we ship. This is how we would easily add that extra intent. It's just be, in whatever we're using to route that intent, adding another branch and shipping it.
Given that we will most likely provide this as template, it should be hackable, right? It should be like have those little paths where you can just hook up your own logic, your own visualization.
Exactly. And this is the case, I could see this at end-to-end. We have some really complicated telemetry. Why? Because we have it's a non-linear canvas editor, right? Like you don't have simple linear flows.
Yeah.
So our data sometimes requires some pretty serious Python. So I could see there being certain types of queries or certain types of, if someone at NNN were to copy this template in the prompting, they might be adding an extra paragraph explaining, hey, here's some guidances about our data. A very simple version of this would just take any post-hoc source, but maybe, and this again could be run by workflow, there's an onboarding, right? When you're setting a source, like add like your post-hoc source, where we can ask a few questions from the user to then later populate the front. Because you see there's various annotations the user could add. A lot of telemetry systems, you're going to have some events from a year ago that have a little bit of different schema. You can explain that quickly. There's things you'll know about your system sometimes.
Yeah.
But anyways, we can figure out some MVP way in onboarding where the user connects their sources, adds in extra metadata that we need, and then the sources are running then, and then you can just ask questions on those sources, right?
How would you approach, or do we actually want visualization of that? Because it would be simple to have like with NNN the chat interface, but the chat interface will also answer like in string.
Here's an interesting idea. There are some open source GPT killer UIs, and I'm guessing some of those can be embedded. And we have the chat trigger. Maybe the MVP, and as a day one, let's get it working with a chat trigger.
I would really prefer if we get it done with NNN itself, with most of the stuff you like with NNN. Okay. So when people downloading the template, they just need to put up some credentials, setting things up, and then they are done. No additional software.
Right. Then, and we do it like this. NNN webhooks can serve HTML, right?
Yeah.
And so if we have the homepage route / right, serves a page, login, maybe we don't need No, you know what? Webhooks can have basic auth on them. So you just sign in with basic auth. Single user app, right? Basic auth just to sign in because this is your proprietary database. We're going to have some authentication on it. It loads a dashboard view. That will load either a default state, if there's nothing in there, or obviously we'll populate your whatever. We load that, and then from there, there's going to be buttons to launch a new question thread or something, right? And that can open up the chat trigger URL.
Oh yeah, that is a good idea. Kind of hacky, but I love it.
The nice thing is, anyone could take that. If hey, you want to go take this and launch a SaaS product with it and reuse it and build it from it, you could. But we show you how you could all launch it from an end-to-end workflow. I like this. The front end, we could code in something like Cursor. I've been doing something Cursor and pasting it in then into the end-to-end.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
That's super cool.
So I've been pushing pixels for 15 years, UX, so I could whip up some lo-fi mock-ups. I haven't, can Cursor take images? I haven't fed a mock-up yet. I know there's these like Figma to AI.
Yeah, I'm almost sure it can, but nevertheless, I think with Cursor, we could also prompt it to make it nice, to make it look like a SaaS. Let's be explorative.
Yeah, and then unless you disagree, then I can mess around with the UI UX stuff, given that's my background.
Yeah, feel free. I actually also have my first contract with Sparks was basically graphic design.
Okay.
So
Yeah, same here. I remember the first website I made in Photoshop. That was painful. Oh my goodness. Vector-based.
Slicing.
Yeah.
Slicing. Oh, come on. That was the golden ages of web development. I'm so happy that we are evolved.
I remember when someone showed me Sketch. Figma up and took their show, but without Sketch we wouldn't have Figma.
Exactly. Do you know the tool Framer? Framer is for me like the next evolution of Figma. Or let's say Framer is really focused on web and it makes it, like if you want to deploy your Figma to web, then Framer is like the most straightforward way, even though you can't really import your Figma file, but like just start in Framer, designing your stuff, and you will be so much happier.
This trend I love to see. So it's easy to make software today than 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Easier being cheaper, less people, right?
Yeah.
So I think we see, before we used Photoshop to make websites. Why? Well, the tooling for websites wasn't involved, but also the cost to make a decent tool was very high. With that lowering, we see an ecosystem. We got Sketch still, and it has some functionality I think that Figma still doesn't have. There's Framer, there's Figma, there's dozens of other apps with more niches there, and they all have something to contribute to the ecosystem. And same thing with automation. Like N&N's a great tool. But we sometimes talk with Zapier. Like there's some folks where if you're not technical at all and you want a simple notification, I have told those people empathetically, hey man, set up in Zapier.
Yeah.
If you get curious about automation, want to go deeper, N&N's a good tool that has this and this and this. But I think it's okay to use different tools in the job.
I saw things people made with Zapier, and they made it really fast. And I'm biased with N&N and all the good stuff, but he was really fast. Because if you have something that fits Zapier's logic of workflow implementation, Zapier's fast. So you can literally create a workflow in 5 minutes that would take in N&N, let's say at least 30 minutes, right?
Isn't that funny though, how we compare now? It's like, oh my goodness, 3x would have been, it's still 30 minutes. I caught myself on some of my AI workflows. The Notion database generator. So it takes a workflow JSON, takes a different Notion database schema and outputs a working workflow JSON.
Yeah.
When you work, it was taking 60 seconds. And I was getting pissed. I was like, damn, why is it taking so long? I was like, Max, this thing is generating a workflow. It's gonna work and you can just paste in. And it literally, there's videos of me doing that. I was like, Max, dude. Like some of these things, like, I read academic papers and summarize them all pretty well into a single one. And I was like, why did that take 90 seconds? Like, Max, how long would it take you to read 8 academic papers and summarize them? Like,
we are so used to AI, and AI is so fast. So even with the new models like O1, which actually takes also a couple of seconds to fulfill a task, and we are sitting there, oh man, it's just taking 20 seconds. Where's my answer, right? We are so used to have fast responses to get things done in a blink.
Remember Googling it for 15 minutes on 10 different sites?
We are evolved. We are kind of used to that.
I think the good thing about this being a sort of a B2B product, even let's say this analysis took 3 minutes, let's say. If it took a human 45 minutes to figure that out, they knew how. I think for this, if this was a B2C case, I would be worried.
Yeah.
And obviously, we should try and make it as fast as possible.
Dude, I have in production a couple of AI agents that take 10 minutes to fulfill the task. But the response is so rich. We are not talking chatbot here. We are talking like full-blown document generation, multiple pages, multiple sources, written with AI, and really letting AI not only do multiple steps at once, but also utilize reasoning and analyzing so much in this workflow. And
How did you set that up? How is it structured at a high level?
we have like a generic chat tool, something like Telegram, to interact with the agent and basically let it know its task with multiple steps. You will outline the things the agent should do. I cannot talk too much in detail because, like NDA.
Have you not heard of the friend DA? We're all friends here. Right?
Definitely with the camera. No, I really can't go too much into detail. But for such complex agents, it's always the same. You need to figure out how you deal with like such asynchronous response times. So you need to be able to ask the agent, hey, how is my stuff doing? How much percent is it doing? Or the agent itself.
Have a giving like
Yeah,
percentage.
because in the starting, the user were like, okay, where's my response? 10 minutes later, where's my response? Because we told them 10 minutes response times usually. Like a couple of tasks could take longer.
Yeah.
Then we figured, okay, we need some way to give the user feedback where the agent currently is with its process.
Is it multiple agent steps? So you in between those steps, you basically give like we're
Yeah.
about 33%.
We utilize long chain agents in n8n with multiple tools and multiple of those agents. So each agent has this particular task to fulfill. Could be crawling stuff, could be just analyzing stuff, could be reformatting stuff, could be also like validating stuff from another AI agent.
Yes.
So there's this idea of supervisor AI agents.
Yeah.
With n8n, we can just build it like while designing the workflow. Like this agent depends on this, so you just connect them one another. But we have situations where we loop back. So one of those agents is like in a loop and checks and continuously improving stuff until the validator agent is happy with the result. And this is game changing.
I know exactly what you mean. I remember when I was working on the generator, the Notion database generator. So I was working 80% of the time, and the 20% of the time, there was one case where it would just have a placeholder body in one of the tools. So I asked ChatGPT actually to give me a regex to check for that on the Workflow.json. And then if it was that case, I added a little sentinel that said, hey, you got it wrong with this reason, rerun.
Yeah,
And then rerun.
exactly.
And then for the fallback case, I just ran it through a simple chain, which was like, check if this is valid Workflow.json and Workflow.json.
Yeah.
And it also did that check, and if not, it also reran. So I had two separate checks. Now, again, if there was a third check that came up or in prod, we're like, hey, there's another case coming up. Add another case to switch node, a little pre-prompt, and loop it back. And it's that looping back. That's so powerful when you realize, what else could I,
Definitely. And also, for me, it's mostly improving the output, like giving it not one shot, giving it multiple shots that it has to fulfill. It's such a cool thing because it levels up your production game with AI agents. All you want is like less failure responses, actual useful content generated from AI, and you have to think about it. What makes useful content? Then you want to automate that. You want to automate that with AI, and in the end, you will end with some kind of validator agent or supervisor agent and like multi-steps agent that working like a team together. It's super cool.
And that's interesting about this working as a team. You've mentioned it, and when I was in San Francisco some weeks back, this topic also came up. The idea, I think it makes a lot of sense that if you're trying to mimic a complex task that a person or people did, you have to understand the domain. How do the people do that well? There was this one guy I was talking with, and they were working on creating basically unit testing for the outputs, and they were testing whether they give good legal advice.
And
I was like, as developers, the first step was interviewing a lawyer. How would you, if a junior gave you, and this is a great way to think about it sometimes, is how would you audit a junior's work? Because that's kind of what an AI agent is. So go to a senior. Let's say you were trying to audit code. Go to a senior developer and say, okay, let's say it's a PR analyzer, and interview the developer. Walk me through what you would do and what you look for, what are the criteria, and that's all stuff, inspiration for your prompts.
And that's the thing, in the end, it's a big prompt, it's a humongous prompt, but it takes so much, for me, it's like rules in the end, because you are guardrailing the agent. And domain knowledge might be a really interesting thing to even fulfill with like rec or something like that. So you can give it like more context, how to do stuff. Domain knowledge and giving this, the AI agent is really paramount. Because in the end, if you think this through, your agent generates something that people consume, that people need to depend on in their work. And naturally, it just needs to be high quality to make sense for them, right?
And how many times this has happened already with some big AI company, let's say OpenAI, releases some big headline.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then it hits me like 2 minutes later, like, I think I could recreate that and like, oh, one, right? What does it do? It thinks.
Yeah.
And so I was doing this use case. I thought it's pretty cool where, let's say I have like a playlist of YouTube videos and I want to turn that into a short podcast.
Yeah.
I want to summarize these 15-minute YouTube videos into like a 15-minute podcast.
Yes.
There's apps that do this for you. And then I realized, okay, abstract that up. It doesn't have to be YouTube, just any big text inputs and summarize it. I tried it once and it was too simplistic. It was being, I don't know, GPT, different models tend to sometimes skew for smaller results. So I thought, try to mimic what O1's doing. And I thought about how might a podcast get produced in a production house. So my first agent was the producer. Producer was like, its job is create an outline. It had access to Wikipedia. Exactly. So what it does, or this specific one, it took a historical topic, like the Berlin Wall, and output a podcast on this topic. So the producer had access to Wikipedia to get an outline. Had to output in chapters with Markdown. I then split each chapter, and each chapter goes through a loop node into the research assistant. The research assistant's job is to research each chapter. And after it researches its chapter, maybe there's a text this long, it summarizes that text in the next step. That summary gets added to a super base where the ID is the execution ID. So it writes each chapter. By the end, there's n number of records in the super base for that execution ID for each chapter. I feed in the summaries of the previous chapter. So for that chapter, it could understand to research more on what happened later in that chapter.
That is super cool.
Or to not just do it again. And then once that loop's done, it goes to my script writing agent where I use Anthropic. I tell it to be more creative. I give it some examples of good scripts. And its job is use the research from these chapters to output a high quality podcast, whatever. And I'm still fine tuning it a bit, but I'm getting much better results from that.
It's super cool.
Because I modeled how a human will do it. And
exactly.
And the reason I mentioned this is Oleg and I did this test on single agent versus serial agent because it's kind of a serial agent approach. And in that one, the single agent one worked better. But I think the reason why is we took a single agent workflow and we just broke it up. We didn't do it based on the domain, like, oh, this is how people do it. We were just doing an A/B test of serial versus agent, or versus single. So I think probably the best thing is, if you're gonna have a serial approach, do it because you're modeling, like that's how humans would do it. Don't just break it up for any reason. Like, what's your take on that, given your experience? Because you've done this in production a lot more than me.
I would say it follows like a best practice that I have the feeling is a way to handle like large inputs for an agent that have to do multiple steps. Is like taking this humongous task and splitting it down to several subtasks and let agents run those subtasks and then glue it together, and then you have this finisher agent that figures out how to glue those texts together that it makes sense when you're reading. The last agent is really just make it nice. Then you have those worker agents, and then you have this agent that designs how the other agent should work. It follows supervisor agent, but the first agent is just like outlining the process. And then it runs through.
Nice thing about this approach too is, and this is important for production, you can pick the right model for the right job. So we were talking about on some other use case how you might have like intent classification at first, right? We're talking about this Slack bot that can change your status. And we want it to be fault tolerant, right? If you say change my status to lunch or to lunchtime, that it works for that. You could probably have a really simple, really fast model, be able to handle the text of lunchtime and lunch and it's time to eat, you know, master the intent for that. It'd be terrible to use Claude Opus for that, or very expensive and very slow.
Do you mix model families? Like, do you use GPT, OpenAI models for specific tasks, and then switch to Anthropic for other tools?
I
in
have.
this stack?
I wouldn't say I have a best practice around
Yeah.
that. When I'm creating templates, I try to keep it in the family because otherwise it's two API keys to create. Like for this thing that we want to build,
Yeah.
I could see there being, let's say we stay with GPT, let's say.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm going to be curious on your favorite models in a second.
Yeah.
But there's going to be moments where Mini makes sense, 4.0 makes sense, maybe O1
Ooh,
could
that
make
might be really interesting.
Today, we might ship the use case, and 4.0 is the best for it, or the Claude 3.5 is the best for it. What happens if tomorrow a model comes out that is amazing at statistical analysis? Of all the stuff we have to do, that might be only one agent doing that. If we swap that agent, and if we set it up like this, we can set that up. But if we had this as some monolithic single agent, how would we do that? It would be maybe harder to get that done. So yeah, right model for the right job is this like adage I've been saying. But speaking of models, what would your default be like when you're building a use case?
I actually stick a lot to GPT models from OpenAI because they are straightforward. My clients are familiar with those. There are options to have them hosted in Europe with Azure, right? So it's really easy. But I also have workflows that rely on Anthropic cloud models. Given like the big context window is really a win.
Is that the main difference, or is this specific use case you're like, I think Claude's going to be better?
There's also like use cases because I was actually attending on the AWS Summit Claude best practice prompting, prompt engineering session. They told us how they trained Claude. There's a lot of XML training involved. So
which training?
XML file-based training. For Claude, we have best practices to rely on XML kind of prompt engineering. So you can have like context. Yeah, and it's actually working better. For OpenAI, it's more like Markdown.
Why did they choose XML?
I'm not sure.
Whenever I see XML, my first thought is just like, oh, the 90s.
When they trained the data, they needed to label the data. So they have human assistant response, right? This is for GPT. For Claude, it was, I think it was not human, but still assistant. And if you use those words, it could actually make some differences.
Cool. So we're going to go register for this event. And then we're going to be Saturday and Sunday hacking along and building an unnamed SaaS product that lets you, what does it let you do, Marcel?
I would say it's your personal data analyst based on logging, based on, what is data hook?
Post hook.
Post hook. Data doc, the other servers, right? Post hook, personal data scientist. I'm really looking forward
personal
to this.
data science is a nice, simple MVP.
Yeah, it's not ambitious at all.
All right.
So, Teamup
register. So that's all from this update. We've got a lot to do between Email Spy and all the other projects. I hope you enjoyed this update. I'm really excited for the Email Spy launch. Don't forget, it's Thursday. We're going to need your support. And since the sprint's been going on for a while, we've got quite a few projects shipped. So go have a look at the project board and tell me your favorites. And on the next update, we'll have that deep dive on Email Spy where we'll ask Oscar how he sort of architected that all out. And again, Oscar is a professional automation consultant. He's building this stuff daily. So he's definitely got that kind of practical expertise you get from running things in product. So I'm really excited about that, to get his expertise and share it with you, save you guys some time when you're building out your solutions. This is the AI Sprint. I'm Max. Hit the button. Do you like hit the button more or follow and subscribe? What do you think? Follow and hit the button? All right. Sprint Squad. We've all got KPIs to hit. So do me a favor and hit that button.